Samantha, I do want to ask you another kind of thing I saw here, and you've been playing fantasy for a long time, so have I. I have seen the incredible evolution away from the quote unquote workhorse running back. It now seems like every single team is by committee. You may even have three guys that touch the rock. And there were a number of teams going into week one where I thought the breakdown of touches and opportunity was going to go one way, and it actually went differently. I'm talking about all the way back on Thursday Night Football. Social media was ablaze with Henderson versus Cam Akers, but we saw them in some other places also. People thought Dameon Pierce was going to be this rock star starter as a rookie for the Houston Texans. It happened with my Jets and a number of other teams. Were there places where you were surprised with how the kind of workload was divided in the backfield?
Sure. I mean, there were definitely a lot of surprises. I would say with Thursday night, I did think that Henderson was going to have a major role. Now, I did not think he was going to outsnap Cam Akers
Right.
55-12, and Cam Akers would just lay an absolute goose egg, which, thank you, that completely torpedoed two of my teams. Great feeling going into Sunday, by the way, when you have a big old zero there. So, I mean, that's concerning, but I did know that I did feel like Akers was going to be eased a little bit back in, despite what he says. Players always just want to go, of course. They're always going to say they're healthy, they want to play, whatever. But I was concerned about him, so I wasn't necessarily drafting him super high. The Burke Pierce thing is interesting because Pierce just got so big so fast. I mean, think about his meteoric rise. Yep. And then and I just thought it got so out of hand. I mean, he went from being drafted as the RB60 to RB20 in the matter of a couple of weeks. And I get it. He had a great preseason. He looked very strong. He's a sexy name and everything, but he's a guy that never had a major workload at Florida. And, college production can be pretty indicative of the type of role that a guy can handle in the NFL. So, I mean, I wasn't surprised to see him kind of eased into things. I mean, Burkhead played 30 more snaps than Pierce did, out-touched him 19-12, and obviously had the better fantasy day. So I think that that's kind of gonna be what it's like until Pierce gets to that point. Now that could be week 6, that could be the end of the season. It's really just a matter of they're not going to force him to carry the entire load. And especially on an offense that is not, I don't think, going to be super, super high scoring, it makes him a little bit less attractive. I've already seen people saying they want to drop Dameon Pierce.
Right.
And, that's a little bit of an overreaction. I think he's a bench for now, but not start.
Well, the overreactions continue here, going from week 1 to week 2. One other backfield split that I want to ask you about, because a lot of people don't think this offense will necessarily perform the same way it did in week 1. I'm talking about the Green Bay Packers. Now, going into drafts, Aaron Jones was drafted as an RB1. A lot of people liked the way AJ Dillon was kind of ascending, and they thought it was going to be a kind of even timeshare. What do you think about the backfield in Green Bay? How do you handle that? And does it matter that you expect maybe the Packers to not be down by 3 scores in the lion's share of their games like they were to Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, that game script did not go as I expected. Now, yes, we got that late news that the Packers O-line would be missing 2 of their linemen, which is a major loss. I mean, they totally flipped the line. But yeah, I mean, I didn't expect the Packers to score 7 points in the entire game, especially knowing that Rodgers has been such a Viking killer in the past. That's just not how I thought it would play out, even without the receivers. Now, if you'd asked me which Packers receiver would I trust, I would have said AJ Dillon. He's the only one, the only pass catcher that I would have been yeah, I feel pretty good about him, because otherwise it's week 1 Sammy Watkins, who was under fed.
It's funny, I was asked the same thing, and my answer was Robert Tonyan, also not a wide receiver, you know what I mean? But I agree.
Totally. I mean, the wide receiver core, it leaves a little bit to the imagination. Now, I think Dobbs and Watson will be fine, will be the guys that you want to roster later on for sure, but they're not starts right now. The whole split, it's a little confusing, but to your point, I think that a lot of that had to do with game script. I think the Packers just they were just shocked a little bit. Mm-hmm. They didn't know how to play that game when they were so far behind. They had no weapons. So I think it might take a little bit of time for them to kind of get back on track. But Dillon is a great snag if you got him. I mean, how could you resist with those giant quads?